Welcome into the Skol Purple podcast. It is the Bears preview show, and we are pleased to be joined by Kevin Lapka from the Bears Nation podcast. You can follow him at KevCharles112 on Twitter, and also follow the podcast at Bears Nation Pod on Twitter. I should say X. We have it as X now. I suppose I should start saying it that way. Alon might get mad. Anyways, Kevin, great to have you here and great to be talking football with you, man.
Great to be back with you guys. We had a lot of fun last year. It's almost football time. I'm ready to go. I know you guys are ready to go. We're about, 10 days away, 9 days away now from the NFL season and just a couple weeks away from the regular season for both of our teams. So we're heating up, man. It's great to be back with you guys.
And Tony, I know you mentioned the hat, the 98 finals hat, the classic hat that he's wearing. So yeah, it's a great hat. Kevin, I guess, first of all, how have things been going for you? What are your thoughts on what the Bears have done this offseason? And yeah, we'll just start with that.
Yeah, like I mentioned, it's been a whirlwind of an offseason. I work in sports radio here in Chicago, and just with having the number one overall pick and then trading the number one overall pick and then spending all the money we had in free agency and then all the draft picks we had and, Kevin Warren coming in as the new president and CEO, it has been just quite an eventful offseason for the Bears. It seems like every week there's something new happening in a different department of the team. So it's been certainly a long 5 to 6 months of the offseason here, ramping up, and we still kind of don't know what to expect, right? There's a lot of people who still believe that this team can win 10, 11 games, and then you still got a lot of people in town who think this is a 5 and 6 win team. Like it's really a wide spectrum of what people think this team can be, but it's been eventful for sure. And I would say more than years past, there is more optimism. But when you're in a market like Chicago and you got people who have been fans of this team for so long and haven't seen this team win in a really long time, there's natural pessimism that's going to happen, and it has been happening. So that's why I'm just ready for the season to start. Like, too much speculation. I don't want to hear your win prediction anymore. I don't want to hear you call into the radio station anymore and tell us Justin Fields, this guy is that. Like, let's just let it play out at this point. Like, let's just let these games begin and let the play on the field decide it. So it's been a long few months, but ready and excited to get going.
Well, hey, Kevin, we do want to hear your record prediction, but we'll save that for a little bit later.
You'll get it from me. Now, again, it's hard. It's hard just because when you have a team, right, that did such of an overhaul that they did, right, and you bring in all these free agents and you expect all these leaps, it's really hard to quantify what an increase in win total could be. So naturally, you're probably not going to. My prediction's not going to be egregious, but it's cautious optimism. So that's a little tease for the.
That's usually a wise way to go about things, especially as we've found out as Vikings fans. Even after winning the Buffalo game last year, we should have been more cautious, but that's the way it goes. Tony, I'm going to throw it to you. Do you have any questions offhand for Kevin in terms of your thoughts on the Bears offseason or whatever you want to throw his way?
Yeah, I mean, I would say just a question, because I think this is, from an outside perspective, I can give you my opinion, but I don't obviously pay attention to the team as closely as you're going to pay attention to the team. But the big, obviously, talker in the offseason was, if Justin Fields is the guy, do you feel that the Bears did enough on the offensive side of the ball to give him the weapons so that way he can prove, is he the guy, or do we need to maybe start thinking about life after Fields? Do you think they did enough for him to kind of put that to rest?
From a weapons standpoint, yes, right? If you're talking about pure weapons and the guys he's throwing the ball to, yes, right? You trade for DJ Moore, you get a guy who's consistently been a 1,000-yard receiver. He's been doing it with quarterbacks far worse than Justin Fields. We're not worried about that. Darnell Mooney's a great wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3. He wasn't equipped to be wide receiver 1 last year, didn't live up to those expectations, but he's fine as a wide receiver 2. His connection with Justin Fields is great. People in Chicago are expecting a little bit more from Chase Claypool. He came in, played about 6 games with the Bears last year, did absolutely nothing, didn't really mesh into the offense, wasn't able to build rapport with Justin Fields. But with a whole offseason, we're expecting him to be a guy who can be a great target, especially in the red zone. Then you bring in a guy like Robert Tonyan, a guy who caught, double-digit touchdowns a couple years ago with the Packers. He's a guy who can, score in the red zone. And Cole Kmet is coming off a decent season last year. You could call that a breakout season. And the running backs, of course, are a running back by committee. But that's just fine when you have a guy like Justin Fields who can basically carry that rushing offense anyway. So from a weapon standpoint, yes, there's enough there. We aren't concerned about the weapons to his disposal. The concern mainly comes in with the offensive line still, right? They do a couple things at offensive line. They signed right guard Nate Davis, and they get, with their first-round draft selection, Darnell Wright out of Tennessee, who's been a great product and has looked good in camp. But he went out with an ankle injury a couple weeks ago. He's expected to be ready week 1. But our left guard, Tevin Jenkins, is now out with a calf strain on both legs. You can explain to me how that happens, but he has a calf strain on both legs, and apparently not related to an on-field injury as well, which is just a curious situation. But there's just some injury concerns across the offensive line. You got guys like Cody Whitehair and Lucas Patrick who are going to fill in as veterans in this league, but also guys who have been injury prone throughout their career. So as the offensive line is currently constructed, with most of those guys being ready to play week 1, you feel okay. But if this is an offensive line that is continually be shuffled with guys who are injury prone and guys missing games, you're going to have a little bit of concern there. And they just traded for Dan Feeney, formerly of the Dolphins, played 17 games with the Jets last year before signing a 1-year contract with the Dolphins this offseason, who's going to fit in there as a depth piece in the interior of the offensive line. But there's still some slight concern about, can this offensive line give Justin Fields enough time for him to work out of the pocket? We know what he can do outside of the pocket. We know he's great as a thrower on the run, but everyone is expecting his development to improve from inside of that pocket. He has guys who can get open intermediate and quickly, like DJ Moore, but he's going to need that protection hold from that offensive line. But from a weapon standpoint, to answer that question, Tony, yes, they do have enough weapons to their disposal. We're not worried about that.
Yeah, I would say that I kind of knew where you were going, Kevin, when you were leading into it. I kind of figured you were going with the offensive line because that was the Achilles heel last year for the Bears. It seemed like, obviously, weapons-wise weren't great last year, but they could have been okay had the quarterback had more time to throw the ball. And even as good as Justin Fields is while he's on the run, it's still not great for any quarterback to have a struggling offensive line, and that showed a lot last year, and it could show up again this year.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. I mean, you look at Justin Fields, and the biggest thing about his game, especially for me watching him multiple years at Ohio State, I was on the sideline for 2 years doing video stuff there. I saw Justin Fields close and personal in that 2020 COVID season. I was one of like 15 people in that stadium watching him up front. So I always like to tell people I have a little bit of a leg up on them when it comes to scouting him in college. And of course, the pros are completely different, and it's proved to be that way thus far in his career. But the number one thing was, he had such an established connection with two guys in college, and Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson. Like, they were just on the same page every single time. And he's been waiting for that in the league, and he finally has that with DJ Moore. But the second thing was, like, every single play in college, he had a million, seconds to throw. He had all the time in the world. And, you say what you want about his mental processing. Like, maybe he's just a guy that needs some more time in the pocket to process the field and read a defense. Maybe that's just the way it is. And if that's the way it is, then yeah, he's going to need more time to sit back and evaluate those things. I mean, that's the only element of his game in the league that we're waiting to develop. Like, we know that everything else, as it pertains to him as a quarterback, is there, right? The accuracy is fine. The deep ball accuracy is great, right? There's no concerns about that when he has the time. The throw on the run is great. Obviously, he's one of the best running quarterbacks in the NFL. It's just, can he get enough time in the pocket to make decisions and have confidence? And that's where I get the most worried when it comes to Justin Fields, is I think what you started to see a lot last year, and some of the criticisms of him, and even the biggest criticism of him this far in the preseason, is he's been too quick to flush the pocket, right? There's guys open 5 to 10 yards intermediately. There's guys open in the flat, and he's still, opting to, flush the pocket and get 5 yards with his legs, which is fine, right? I mean, 5 yards is 5 yards, whether it's, via the air or via, the ground. but you would like to see him be a little bit more patient, have a little bit more confidence, sit in that pocket, maybe even take a hit, right, and still deliver a strike down the field. I just don't think that mentally he's there yet to sit there and have enough confidence and look at the 5 guys in front of him and say, these guys are going to protect me for even 2 seconds or as long as I need to deliver a strike to anybody down the field. So the hope for me, and I think for a lot of Bears fans, is have this offensive line you've worked with throughout training camp, have confidence in them, get through a couple games in the season where you can have confidence that they'll protect you. And then by the time week 3, week 4, week 5 hits, you have full confidence in them. You're willing to sit in that pocket, take hits, and have trust that they're going to protect you.
Yeah, one more thing I'll say on that offensive line is I think, as bad as that offensive line was last year, it does maybe take a little getting used to for Justin Fields to not be ultimately panicking immediately every time he has the ball. Like it seemed like there was many times last year when he would very quickly, okay, I've got to make a decision. I got to go. So maybe there's still a little bit of that creeping in, that mindset creeping in a little bit for him. And he's got to maybe try and get rid of that, as hard as that may be to try and do.
And I think part of it for him too is like he also knows though that if he does escape the pocket quickly, he's got a chance to run 60 yards for a touchdown, right? Like I think that's in the back of his mind. Like he just knows he's faster than everyone on the field and he's athletically gifted enough to make special plays. And when he did it so often last year, I think part of that is in his mind to say, hey, I know I can make a big play on the ground. I'm just going to do that. It's easier, right? It's almost easier for him to just run 60 yards for a touchdown instead of sit in the pocket, take a hit, and deliver a 60-yard bomb to DJ Moore or John Mooney, right? Like that's probably in the back of his mind there. So it's a complicated situation for Bears fans when they witness that, because again, like if it's a 6-yard touchdown on the ground, it's 6 points, right? Like that's fine. But there's so many people who are just skeptical to believe that he's going to be a Super Bowl winning quarterback or a quarterback who can be top 5 in the league if he can't do it from the pocket and he can't throw. So I don't want to see him like stop the running. Like we're not imploring for him to stop running at all and just sit in the pocket the entire game. Like that's not what we want from him this year. It's just a little bit more patience and a little bit more confidence. And it's going to take time to build that. Like I want them to win. And I think they're going to win week 1 against Green Bay, but like, I'm not expecting him to throw for 350 yards and 4 touchdowns in that game, even against a defense that's not great and a pass rush that's not great. The secondary is solid. We know Jair Alexander is great. Obviously you guys see him twice a year as well, but that's a team that lost a lot of talent on defense. They're just not, gifted on that side of the ball, but still, even against that opponent, there's going to be growing pains still with the new offensive line, with a rookie on the offensive line, with a free agent there as well. And then Cody Whitehair switching positions to center, a position he did not play last year and hasn't played since 2018. So there's going to be growing pains naturally for this offensive line. And it's going to take a couple weeks to work out the kinks.
Tony, any other questions for Kevin on the offensive line or the offense as a whole, I should say?
No, I think and you hit it on the head, Kevin. I mean, if I were a Bears fan, which to be very clear, I'm not. No.
I knew it.
But if I were a Bears fan, just from an outside perspective looking in, I mean, it's like anything, you don't want anyone to be, especially your quarterback, to be too one-dimensional. And I think that's where it gets, that's where there's some concern would be, you don't want him to rely so much on the legs where if you've got a rather savvy defensive coordinator or just a team that, can actually perform at a high level on the defensive side of the ball, I mean, they're going to stack the box just like they would against, a team that runs the ball with a running back. And they're basically going to force him to beat him with his arm. And with the teams that actually have good defenses, we started to see that last year, where essentially they were just like, we're just going to basically give you man coverage and see what you can do. That's what, again, the proof's going to be in the pudding, for me as an outsider. Is I think that there's going to be a similar game plan, with him this year, meaning opposing defenses. So, they're going to force him to try to throw and, we'll see if upgrade in weapons, is going to help. And then to your point, I mean, unfortunately a bad O-line, not a whole lot you can do with that. So hopefully those guys start to gel together. We certainly are no stranger to offensive line issues here on our Vikings team. Yeah. So we certainly understand you can have I mean, unless you've got somebody really special back there, like a Patrick Mahomes or something, these quarterbacks, they need some time. It's just a different amount of time for some of these guys. So hopefully they can get it together. And as you mentioned, we're not going to know until the season starts. So
from your comfortability standpoint, you mentioned that you felt like the weapons are in a good spot. Like from a grading level, where would you put this like weapons core compared to like some of the others in the league? Would you kind of give it like a B? Would you that's kind of where I'm at, like a B minus maybe kind of. I still want to see something from Chase Claypool. I'm not convinced he's going to be great. Is Robert Tonyan going to be able to repeat his success he had a couple of years ago? DJ Moore, I think, will be really good, but if defenses are able to double cover him and not have to worry about other weapons on the field, that's kind of where I would be concerned with the Bears offense of weapons. Where would you say your comfortability is with them?
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to grade it, I honestly would give it a B plus. I think this is a really good arsenal of offensive weapons for Justin Fields. When you just look across the roster, you just have a lot of guys who can do a lot of different things, right? And I think that's key when you look at an offense that you want to have success down the field and then in the red zone, right? You look at a guy like DJ Moore who could do everything for you. He's a good yards after the catch guy. And then you look at a guy like Darnell Mooney, who's a great deep threat, a guy who can run routes really well and get open. Then you have your big X receiver and Chase Claypool who can catch balls for you in the end zone. And then, you go down the roster, you get a guy like rookie 5th rounder from Cincinnati, Tyler Scott. I don't know if you guys have heard of him yet. Probably not. He's a 5th round rookie for, a team like the Bears that you probably don't follow that much. But this is a guy who's a great deep threat as well. A guy who's scary down the field, who you can also use in different option situations, end arounds, and different creative things in the red zone. Equanimous St. Brown's a guy who can catch passes. You can't catch him very well, but he can catch them sometimes. And then you got Cole Kmet and Robert Tonyan, two different tight ends for you, both in the red zone and across the field. This is an offense that is entirely different from last year from a versatility standpoint. I think that's what's exciting. You have a lot of different guys who can do different things for you. You can throw a lot of different things at defenses, which is why I give it a B plus. If you were to grade it from a pure talent aspect as it's constructed right now, it's probably not a B plus. But when it comes to the things that are at Luke Getsy, offensive coordinator's disposal, yeah, it's really, really exciting for you to look at all these different tools and weapons and say, hey, we can do a lot of really creative things offensively, especially when you think about how you can throw defenses off with a quarterback like Justin Fields who can run a little bit. So if they're going to spy him, that leaves another guy open, right? Like you can really, really get creative. And I think Luke Getsy is kind of chopping at the bit to use some of these guys in different ways. Even a guy like Velus Jones Jr., who many actually thought would be cut today, was a guy who scored a couple of touchdowns. I want to say he scored one against Minnesota in the first game.
Probably.
On an end around. And that was just, an example of a guy who's not going to get a lot of yards, but a guy that they can use in different situations. So for that reason, like I'm going to give it a B plus. And, there's again, a lot of names that, don't really pop out. Like even DJ Moore for a lot of people doesn't really pop. Like he's not a top 10 receiver, but this is a guy who's just a model of consistency. He's going to catch the football. He's going to get you yards. He's going to be a perfect asset for Justin Fields. But a lot of people don't want to put him in that same range as like even an AJ Brown or a Stephon Diggs, which, he's probably not there yet. But, if you pair him with a guy like Justin Fields who takes a leap, right? Look what AJ Brown did when he went to Philadelphia. Look at what Stephon Diggs when he went to Buffalo. There's a lot of people that are expecting Stephon Diggs to be that guy that receivers like, Stephon Diggs and AJ Brown were for Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts, right? That's the expectation. So if you get DJ Moore to be this year a 1,300-yard receiver with like 9 touchdowns and get into that range, then he can kind of wiggle himself up to be a top 12, top 10 wide receiver. And then you feel a lot better about those weapons. And then, like I mentioned, Darnell Mooney is just sort of a sneaky name. He had that great catch against you guys last year, that kind of one-handed catch in Minnesota. That was great. I'm sure you guys kind of remember that one. And then Chase Claypool, just, if he can stay healthy too, that's just the main thing with him. But I'm not, there's people who are willing to declare him just like done right with his career. Like they're just giving up on him. I'm just not ready to do that. And if he returns to that rookie form in in Pittsburgh, where he had like 800 yards and what do you? I think like 10 touchdowns that year. He had a 4-touchdown game his rookie season. Then yeah, this is 100% an offense that could be a top 10 in the league when it comes to weapons. So for now, I'll give it a B+, but I think it has the potential to get up to be, in A-. And the running backs too. Khalil Herbert, Deonta Foreman, Roschon Johnson, rookie from Texas. Like no one stands out there, but again, I'm just not worried about it. You know what I mean? Like Isaiah Pacheco was the Super Bowl champion running back. Like you guys cut Dalvin Cook. We kind of know that in this age of the NFL, having a superior running back just doesn't hold the same weight as it has in the past. So I'm not too worried about not having a true RB1 on this team. Like Justin Fields is the RB1. Let's be honest. And I'm not saying he's a running back. I'm not saying he's a running back, but he's the best rusher on the team. And I think everybody in the league knows that.
Sure.
At Kev Charles 112 on X for all of you that want to chime in.
Yeah, right. I have kind of an oddball question for you. And this does relate to Fields, but just more or less, there's nuance to the NFL and there's nuance to the psyche of these guys. I think for me, I almost as a Vikings fan, I'm kind of in my safe space. I'm in my comfortable zone right now because everybody is counting us out. And that's where I'm comfortable. I'm comfortable when everybody's like, yeah, the Vikings, they're going to regress. They're going to be maybe, sitting around 500. It's not going to happen. So everybody's writing us off and I'm okay with it because that means low expectations and we can just focus. Is there any concern on your end? Not to say that I wouldn't say it's at the level of the Lions. The Lions are in their own thing right now with the media, and they're the little darling of the NFC North right now. But I do see a lot of the ramp up of Fields is going to be the next top 5 quarterback in this league, and all this stuff, and I think that's really cool, and it can be very confidence inspiring. But it's a double-edged sword because I feel like when things then don't go well, then it's even more pressure and more weight of what happened? Why is this not working out? And then we've seen it time and time again where things then start to spiral because it gets in guys' head and then it becomes a confidence issue. I don't know Fields that well. Obviously, I don't know him personally, but I don't watch enough of him in press conferences and games with body language. Is there any of that concern with you, or you're like, no, this guy's he's Mr. Cool. He's not going to bother him. But is there anything where that weight is a little let's be a little careful here, guys?
Well, you're absolutely right about this because the hype around him has been real, especially in the media. It's been insane, and the sports books have had him as a top 3, MVP shareholder of the bets that's coming in this offseason, right? All these things are real, and it's funny you bring it up because this exact same thing happened actually before the 2019 season for the Bears with Mitch Trubisky. There was the same sort of reports. He was getting a ton of MVP bets, and the Bears were coming off a 12-4 season where they lost to the Eagles on the double doink, and everyone's like, okay, next year Mitch is going to go crazy and the Bears are going to be a Super Bowl team, and all these things happen. And Mitch Trubisky was a player who was not equipped to handle it. He couldn't live up to the expectations. He wasn't able to handle pressure. And I would feel more nervous about what you're talking about if I didn't feel like Justin Fields was a guy who can handle it. This is a guy who's very calm-mannered, who's handled pressure his entire career. He's been in the spotlight since he was, 14 years old, right? He was on that TV show on Netflix. I'm forgetting the name of it now, that featured him and a couple other quarterbacks. It was Under the Lights or something like that, QB1 Under the Lights. Yeah, he's been in the spotlight his whole career. He's lived up to all the expectations at Ohio State, right? I am not worried about him as a person looking at everything and feeling surrounded and feeling an immense amount of pressure and not being able to live up to it. Maybe I'm wrong, right? Again, I don't know him personally either. I don't talk to him on a daily basis, right? I've spoken to him before, but not regularly. Not enough to tell whether he can handle the pressure like this. And it's not easy for anyone, right? There's only been a few players, in the league who have truly lived up to an insane amount of pressure, especially in a market like Chicago. And I think that's just a key thing to note is not only is it the market, but it's just the history of this franchise, right? Like, we've never had a 4,000-yard passer. We're waiting and waiting and waiting to finally have a franchise quarterback. He's supposed to be the hero. He's supposed to be the savior. He's the best draft pick at quarterback that we've ever had, and everyone knows it, right? The most accomplished college quarterback to be drafted to this team. So the expectations began, like, they're high now, but they began the moment he was drafted. Like, the moment that he was drafted that night, the expectation was, you're going to be the best quarterback to walk through this franchise. And, you know, you could argue about whether he's lived up to, like, he obviously hasn't lived up to that billing yet. And it's only, you know, he's only played 2 years in the league, and he had a pretty decent year last year, all things considered. But I think me and most people, like, we're not too worried about him feeling the pressure so much that it'll break him down. Like, he's a guy that can handle it. He's calm, you know, in the toughest situations. So I think that'll be just fine. I think when it comes to the team in general, there's a little bit of concern about that, just because there are people who think they can be an 11-win team and a 12-win team and all these things and win the North. And maybe it's too much too soon, right? Because they won 3 games last year and the Super Bowl window doesn't open until next year and all these different things. But I also don't have a problem with setting expectations high. Like, if that's the, like, if, like, you're all in right now, you spent all the money, you made the right picks, right? You know, you traded for guys, like, you built this team this offseason to win now. So if that's the case, then yeah, set the expectations high. Like, in that building, I know every team does this, you know, let's win the Super Bowl, right? But obviously a team like the Cardinals probably is not saying that in the building, but, like, that should be the expectation, right? Like
Somebody's going to have to slap them over the head if they are.
Yeah, seriously. Like, let's be real. Let's be real. I mean, that's going to be more of a tank job than what the Bears accomplished last year.
Well, one more question before we get to your record prediction, and then we'll wrap things up. But what are your thoughts on the defense? I feel like this might be the weakest point that you feel on the team, and maybe it is the weakest point of the roster for the Bears, because it sounds like the offense, other than the offensive line, is pretty set to go. So what are your concerns with the Bears defense? How have they looked in camp? I think just off the bat, I'll tell you my biggest concern is their defensive line.
Yeah, no, this is an offense that I think is going to be a top 16 offense, or rather top 12 offense. But this is a defense that's going to be middle of the road, you know, average, above average at best, right? Like, and everyone knows that in this age of the NFL, you know, that can be okay. But before, I'll be honest, before the signing of Yannick Ngakoue, I was terrified for what this defense was going to, you know, present to us, especially week 1 against Green Bay and just throughout the entirety of the season. I mean, you were walking in with an offensive line of DeMarcus Walker, who was a free agent acquisition from Tennessee, who had like 6 sacks last year and, you know, nothing special. You got Justin Jones, who's playing nose tackle, who, you know, did a little something last year, but didn't provide enough pressure. You had Andrew Billings, a free agent signing. And then that other edge position was either going to be Dominique Robinson, who's a 5th-round rookie from last year, who was playing wide receiver at Miami of Ohio 2 years ago. And then Travis Gibson, who just got cut today. So yeah, we would have been in some serious trouble if we had not signed Yannick Ngakoue. Luckily, they do sign Ngakoue. He's going to be sort of a plug-and-play guy, a guy who can get you 8 to 9 sacks. I mean, last year, I don't know if you guys know this. Can you guess who the leading sack leader on the Bears was last year? Do you know this?
Robert Quinn?
Robert Quinn got traded to the Eagles, so no, it was not Robert Quinn.
Well, I kind of figured maybe he still led after he got traded.
Yeah, he was terrible. You got a guess, Tony?
I don't.
The sack leader for the Bears last year was safety Jaquan Brisker with 3.5. So yeah, rightfully, we have been concerned about that front four and the pressure that they've been able to provide. But with Yannick Ngakoue, you get a guy who can actually get up to the quarterback. And they did spend 2 early draft picks in the 2nd and 3rd rounds on nose tackles, defensive guys up front, with Zach Pickens out of South Carolina and Gervon Dexter out of Florida, who are just 2 athletic freaks, guys who need development, but guys who can just get after it and are great athletes. Now, what I will say is this team made some great signings in the offseason in the middle of their defense and in the secondary. So you get Tremaine Edmonds, a guy who's already played 6 years in the league, is a great veteran who's proved himself in Buffalo to be your middle linebacker. And then you get a guy who played in the Super Bowl who is sneakily effective with a ton of tackles last year, and TJ Edwards from Philadelphia. And then Jack Sambar returning as an undrafted rookie out of Wisconsin who played well last year in the end of the year when some guys went down. So I feel really good about the linebackers, but it's really the secondary that makes you feel positive about the defense. You got Jalen Johnson, who's a lockdown cornerback. You got Jaquan Brisker. I think Jalen Johnson and Justin Jefferson had some great battles. Of course, Justin Jefferson probably won them, but those two guys go at it. Jalen Johnson's a great player. Jaquan Brisker, like I mentioned, the team sack leader, is a guy who can be a Pro Bowler this year in his second year out of Penn State. Eddie Jackson, before he got injured last year, had about 4 interceptions, looked like he was returning to 2018 form. And then Kyler Gordon, who was a rookie last year to Washington, had to play some outside corner, just didn't fit well there, but is returning to the slot this year, a position where he's more comfortable, a position he played in college. So the defense, you're a little bit cautiously optimistic about. You don't expect it to be top 10, but you got a lot of new guys, a lot of young talent, and a bunch of athletes. This is going to be a defense that's going to fly to the football and get takeaways. That's what Matt Eberflus has based his defense on. It's what he based it on in Indianapolis. So if you're allowing a ton of yards, but you're getting takeaways, it's a wash, right? Like takeaways win games. So that's the goal for this defense. I think they have potential to do it, but we're not expecting anything crazy. They're going to allow probably a crap ton of yards, probably be a top 15 defense, but you're expecting them to make the right takeaways in the right moments to win you some games this year.
I would say that, our outlooks on both of our defenses are not that dissimilar. I think the Vikings, well, I'm not as optimistic as you are, Kevin. I'm hoping that the purple team is a bit more opportunistic this year with takeaways, and I think that can help elevate both of our squads. So we'll see.
All right. Well, before we get you out of here, we got to get the record prediction. As we've said, I'll just throw it to you before I give my record prediction, and then Tony, if he wants to give his too. So, Kevin?
I have a feeling we're going to be very different on this. I have the Bears winning 9 games this year. I think this is a team that's going to be competitive. They have a last place schedule, obviously, right? Their schedule is really soft. I'm not as high on the Lions as other people are. I think they can split that series. I think they're going to sweep the Packers. I'm really just not just because I'm a Bears fan, I just don't see anything with the Packers at all. I just don't. I think they're going to sweep that, and they have a ton of winnable games on the schedule. If you actually go through their schedule, you can find 9, maybe even 10 games for them to win this year, truly. And if you think about it, they were in games last year. Justin Fields kept them in games. There's just been so many improvements on this team that there's reasons to believe that they could win 9 games. It's not outlandish. And I know there's people who say, well, a 6-game leap is that's just unheard of. That just doesn't happen. Well, it happened last year with the Jacksonville Jaguars, right? They were in the exact same situation. They had the number 1 overall pick. They actually used that number 1 overall pick instead of trading it. But they had a 6-game leap from the year before to from 2021 to 2022 and ended up making the playoffs. The same exact thing can happen to the Bears this year. I truly think it's possible. This team has a lot of talent across the board. The second year in Luke Getsy's system, the second year with Matt Eberflus as a head coach. You can find 9 games for them to win on the schedule. And if Justin Fields actually does take that leap and is an MVP candidate, I'm not going to lie. This team can win 11 games if Justin Fields is that good. They have the potential to do that, but I'm gonna sit at 9 so I don't get killed by the Minnesota Vikings fans listening to your podcast, because I know you guys are going to be around here with 5 wins, 6 wins. And I swear, this is not a homer take. I really do believe that this team has enough talent and is going to be able to make enough plays in the right moments against a pretty soft schedule to win 9 games.
All right, there you have it. That's it. We're not giving ours. No, just kidding. Tony, let's talk him down a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I don't know if I don't know if I'm gonna surprise you or not here, but I don't really like to give an exact number because I just think there's too much fluctuation in the NFL. So I'm gonna give a range. That's what I typically like to do. I would say I expect the Bears to win between 6 and 8 games. So that's not really that far off of where you're at. Again, now could they win more or less than that? Obviously, because there's things like injuries, there's just so many unknowns that happen in this league, but that would be a comfortable range for me, somewhere 6 to 8 wins. And that's basically me saying if they were to win 8, I'm not that surprised. I'm not saying that's their ceiling. It's just that would be my range of where I kind of expect them to be.
Well, what I might have, I got to look and see what, this has been several weeks ago already. I picked the Bears to go 7-10. Okay. And that was actually 4th place. in the division because I had the Packers at 8-9, Vikings 10-7, and Lions 11-6. So, I'm kind of at the point too, though, Kevin, where I'm starting to get a little lower on Green Bay. So I'm thinking that Green Bay could fall below Chicago, and Lord, wouldn't we all just be thrilled if the Packers were at the cellar of the NFC North for years? Obviously, 1 year would be great, but multiple years would be just fantastic. So, I think that's pretty on par, Tony. I don't see the Bears losing or winning less than 6 games, so I'd put that at the minimum. They're going to win at least 6. But I think, Kevin, that my absolute highest ceiling would be your 9 wins. Like I can't see this team winning more than 9 games. I mean, I'll gladly come on here and tell everybody I was wrong, but I just don't think there's going to be more than 6 wins of improvement. I think you're right that it can happen like the Jaguars. But I just think there's too much that has to improve, especially in the NFC North with the Lions and Vikings, who I think are still a step above in overall talent-wise. But that's just my take, and who knows? We could be sitting here at the end of the year being like, oh, we were just wrong. The Bears are the best team in the NFC North, and here we are watching them go to the Super Bowl. I don't know.
I don't know about that. I hope you're right.
Yeah, we don't know. The only thing we all can agree on is that the Packers are going to be bad. and we're all here for it.
I sure hope so. Yeah. Right. I hope all the Jordan Love hype is just hype.
Is
I
there
really
hype?
hope that's...
I don't even know if there is hype.
Oh, there's hype.
There's some Packer fans that are excited about it.
Yeah, there's some growing hype. Yeah. The latest predictions I'm seeing.
May the Bears be able to take that hype and rip it in half in week 1.
I actually saw a prediction that puts the Packers the second in the division, Detroit winning the division, Bears 3rd, Vikings 4th.
Oh my.
Yeah, there's that. I think they had the Packers at like 10-7 and Lions at 11-6. I think they had the Bears at like 7-9 and the Vikings were 6-11 or something like that.
The Packers won 8 games last year with one of the top 3 quarterbacks to ever play the game. And you think they're going to win 2 more with a guy who's played 2 games in his entire career? Like,
a worse roster.
And a worse roster. Like, and I think this is real quick before we head out. Like, the same thing that happened to Bill Belichick when Tom Brady left New England is exactly what's going to happen to Matt LaFleur. He is going to hear it from Packers fans when they start to do poorly, and everyone starts to realize, well, Aaron Rodgers was the coach of this team, basically. Like that. I mean, I don't know if you guys watch Hard Knocks. Robert Saleh ain't the coach of that team. Aaron Rodgers is. So I think the same thing is going to happen.
Ooh,
I think the same thing is going to happen to the Packers. So, yeah.
No, I think the coach. I think the coach of the Jets is Nathaniel Hackett.
Yeah. Well, if that's the case, then they might win 4 games.
Please let that be the case. That would be great. Love to see Aaron Rodgers in misery, but that is going to do it for the Aaron Rodgers in Misery podcast. Thank you all for joining in. Thank you, Kevin, for joining us. Make sure to tell our audience here before you leave where they can get your show, where they can find you, all that good stuff.
Yeah, Bears Nation Podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, and live on YouTube and Twitch Monday nights and Wednesday nights at 7 o'clock. So appreciate you guys having me on, man. It's a lot of fun. You guys are doing great stuff here at the Skol Purple Pod, so keep grinding, man. This is awesome.
Absolutely, and hopefully we'll get you on a couple of times throughout the season.
Yeah, 100%.
All right. That's going to do it for the podcast. Keep watching for more previews, and as always, Skol.
Skol.